Nigeria, one of the African countries, is a major producer as well as a exporter of crude oil. Something very interesting has happened recently in the context of gross domestic product of this country. On 20th July, in terms of ranking based on the size of the gross domestic product, this country was ranked at 58th position. Overnight, it improved its ranking to 55th position, and not just this, it also added $50 billion to its gross domestic product. The reason behind this sudden change in the ranking as well as GDP are said to be change in the methodology which is used to calculate GDP as well as change in the base year. Government of India very recently has announced that they will also be changing the base year to calculate GDP. Currently, we are using the base year of 2011 and 12, and now the government is proposing that it will be changed to 22 and 23. Let's try and understand what is this concept of a base year. Why do we change the base year? And if we are changing the base year, what is the impact of change in the base year? Hello and welcome to Unacademy IAS, a one stop destination for all the English medium civil services aspirants. Before I start the discussion, I have a very important announcement to make. Those who are aiming to clear the upcoming civil services examination, you need to ensure you will have a comprehensive coverage of the static portion as well as current affairs. You need to write multiple prelims as well as mains test series. And every now and then, you need to talk to someone, communicate what are the issues you're facing, and get the issues resolved. That is mentorship services. All of this is available to you once you purchase our courses, which is available at a price of 19,999. And I've been told that this offer is available only for today, and from tomorrow, the prices would be increased. Those who are interested, before you make the purchase, ensure that you will use the code IAS English. And when you use this particular code IAS English, you will also get an extension of up to 12 months free of cost. Those who are interested, do check out the details by clicking on the link provided in the description below. Let me start the discussion. First, very important point. What is this idea of a gross domestic product? What do you mean by GDP? GDP simply refers to the market price of all the final goods and services which are produced in the territory of a particular country. For example, in case of India, the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, which is the nodal ministry for the publication of GDP, measures GDP for every quarter, measures GDP for every financial year as well. Now, before making you understand what is this concept of a base year, let me give you certain historical points as well. After independence, you see, for the first time ever, the national incomes were published for the year 1949. And this was done by a committee named as National Income Committee. And please remember the name of the person who headed this particular committee. The chairperson of the committee was Mr. P.C. Mahalanobis, a very well known statistician. In fact, he is also very well known associated with the concept of planning in India. And when we started publishing this particular data, for the first time, we used the GDP base year for the calculation of this, the base year of 48 and 49. And over a period of time, there have been multiple revisions of this particular base year. And if you take the latest announcement, that is the new base year will be 22 and 23. And using this base year from next year, that is February 2026, government will be announcing the GDP data using the new base year. That will be the eighth revision. I repeat, the eighth revision in the context of base years. Now, some of you might be thinking, sir, what is this base year? Explain to me the concept of base year. Let me ask you one very simple question. Let's say there are two people, A and B. I'm saying A has scored 200 marks and B has scored 300 marks. If I were to ask you, between both of them, who has scored better? Most of you will basically say, sir, this is very easy question. Obviously, it will be B who has scored the highest number of marks. But I will say, did I give you the total number of marks out of which both of them have scored? Did I tell you that both of them have appeared for the same examination? You made an assumption. Correct. You made an assumption. Now, what if I say A has scored 200 out of 250 marks and B has scored 300 out of 1000 marks? Now you will do the calculation and come to a conclusion, sir, in this case, it will be the student A who has scored better. Now, is it okay if I say you have been able to make the calculation and come to a conclusion because there is a reference point here? There is basically a reference point. And whenever a reference point is available, you can simply compare and come to a conclusion. Now, let me extrapolate the same argument in the context of gross domestic product. What if I say, for example, in 2023, of course, I'm talking about financial years. For 2023, the GDP, what is GDP again? Market price of all the final goods and services which are produced in the territory of India. GDP for 2023 is 100 CR and the GDP for 2024 is 120 CR. If you compare both of these GDPs and calculate what is the change in the GDP, you'll come to a conclusion, sir, there is a change by 20%. But don't you think from 2023 to 2024, there will be change in the price level of basket of commodities? In simple terms, from 23 to 24, don't you think there will be inflation experienced by the Indian economy? And because of inflation, the market price of goods and services in 24 compared to 23 would be higher. And because the market price is higher, obviously you will take the market price to calculate GDP. GDP would also be higher. In simple terms, the point I'm trying to make here is whenever you calculate GDP using the current year market prices, we use the term nominal GDP for that. Whenever you calculate nominal GDP, there is impact of inflation in the GDP numbers. Now, for that particular reason, whenever you want to compare two different years' GDP without removing the impact of inflation from both the years' GDP, it is not correct, it is not accurate to compare the GDP numbers. And for that particular reason, mind you, we introduce the concept of base year. Now, what is base year? How do we choose base year? Base year, in simple terms, is a year from which we take the reference point. Or else you can also simply say base year in simple point or in a simple way is the starting point for GDP calculation. Currently, I said we use the base year of 2011 and 12. And how do I use this particular base year? Let's assume, I'll take a very simple example. Your favorite product, my favorite product. Let's say this is the only product which is a final good which is manufactured in India. What was the price of this particular product in 2011 and 12? Let's assume it was 5 rupees. In 2023, the price was, let's say, 7 rupees. Again, hypothetical numbers. In 2024, let's assume the price was 9 rupees. So instead of taking the current market prices to calculate GDP, what I do is I will simply take the base year market price and use the base year market price to calculate GDP for both of the years 23 and 24. And when I take the base year prices to calculate GDP for both 23 and 24, can I simply say whatever was the impact of inflation in both of these years, I've taken out the impact of inflation. And that's a reason when you take the base year market price and calculate GDP for two different years, or for that matter, any year, that GDP is referred to as real GDP. So please remember the 2 points. One is a nominal GDP, that is, you calculate GDP using the current market price, and the other one is the real GDP when you use the base year, the market prices to calculate GDP. Now, because you have removed the impact of inflation in GDPs of both of these years, you can compare and find out what is the growth rate in the GDP of two consecutive years. Now, coming to the next question, how do we choose base year? Is there a formula to choose a base year? The government of India simply says, whenever I want to choose a base year, I will take certain points into consideration. What are the important points? One, that particular year should be almost normal. They'll say normal, but right, let's be frank here. There are certain volatilities in every year. But the argument is in this particular year, the volatilities should be very, very less, should be least. For example, you tell me, will you take 2020 and 21 as a base year? You should never take. Why? Pandemic. Right? So one parameter is the volatilities should be very, very low or least. Second one, in this particular year, we should have collected good amount of data. We should have collected good amount of data, right? Using this particular data itself, we will be able to, right, basically calculate GDP, will be able to adjust for certain changes, etc., etc. Right? So these are certain very important parameters which are used by the government to basically change the base year from one time period to another time period. Now the next question is, should we change the base year very often like this? What is the argument behind it? Don't you think what is the composition of India's economy in terms of GDP? What is the composition? What is the structure in 2024-25 will be different compared to 2010? It will be different compared to, right, let's say 1970. It would be different compared to 1950. So over a period of time, when you experience changes in the composition, structure, industries, etc., to represent that, you should also be changing the base year. Until recently, we used to change base year once every 10 years. And that was because we used to conduct the population census once every 10 years. But post 1990, instead of 10 years, we started changing the base year once every 5 years. The reason behind that, the government simply says, after 1990, we started collecting data. For example, employment data was collected once every 5 years through employment and unemployment survey. So government, instead of collecting or changing the base year once every 10 years or once in a decade, we shifted to once every 5 years. And this continued. For example, the last, before the next year one that we are going to adopt, that is 22 and 23, the last change in the base year was conducted by the government in the year 2015, when we basically adopted or changed the base year from 2004 and 5 to 2011 and 12. This was the change that was introduced in 2015. But after that, no change in the base year has happened. Unlike the earlier convention where we used to change once every 5 years, it's been more than 5 years, we have not been able to change the base year. Now, to be very precise, to be very frank, listen to me carefully now. It's not that the government of India did not change or attempt to change the base year earlier. I said 2015 we adopted 2011 and 12. Later on, government of India wanted to change the base year from 11 and 12 to 2017 and 18. Government of India attempted this, but there was a problem. The problem was government simply said, one, data methodology or collection of data, there is certain problem. For example, this is a time period when the government of India introduced PLFS, Periodic Labor Force Survey, right, which basically measured the employment, unemployment quarterly as well as annually. We collected the data under the the consumption expenditure survey. But the government of India raised serious concerns over the data or the authenticity of the data, and we had to cancel. In addition to that, there was one more very important problem. I'm pretty sure all of you remember demonetization. The demonetization exercise was conducted in 2016. And when you implement a policy such as demonetization, it will have a greater impact. It will disrupt the whole economy. So 2016, you have implemented this policy, and 2017-18, you want to use it as a base year. Citing these particular reasons, Government of India cancelled the idea of adopting 17 and 18 as a base year. After this, we tried to change the base year, but again there was a pandemic. And finally now, the government says we are going to change the base year from 2011-12 to 2000, right, 23. From 2011 and 12 to 2022 and 23, this will be the new base year. Please remember this. Now, why? Why did we choose this as a base year? Government says the Indian economy has recovered from pandemic. That is one very important reason. Second very important reason, the government also says we have been able to collect good amount of data for this particular financial year. For example, we have been able to collect the data in the form of household consumption expenditure survey. So data collection, yes, right? We have recovered from the pandemic, so volatility is negligible. So citing these particular reasons, now Government of India, that is MOSPI, starting next year, whenever you come across the GDP base year, will be using the base year of 22 and 23. Now, these are certain important points. Is there any impact of change in the base year? Please understand, whenever there is a change in the base year, we just don't change the base year. We also implement certain methodological changes. We implement changes in terms of how we collect data, how do we measure the production done in informal economy, etc., etc. And when the last time there was a change in the base year to 2011 and 12, there was some criticism against the methodology of data collection. I'll just give you an example. When last time the base year was changed for the year 2013 and 14, as per the old methodology, we had registered a growth rate of 4.7%. And as per the new methodology, we ended up registering for the same financial year the growth rate of 6.9%. In fact, various experts, including Reserve Bank of India, had raised certain reservations or concerns regarding how we are measuring GDP under the latest methodology. So to wind, what I would basically argue is that the Government of India, no doubt we need to change the base year, but also has to ensure that with the change in the base year, which is a good step, it has to ensure that the data collection methodology that we might introduce, the change in the GDP composition that might happen, there should be sufficient data to back up all the changes in terms of composition of the economy, in terms of growth of the economy, so that the concerns which were raised earlier associated with the change in the base year and the questions over the actual GDP number, same thing doesn't get repeated, and the reputation, the credibility of the GDP numbers will be much better under the new base year. So this is basically the concept associated with gross domestic product, the base year, and why the Government of India changes base year periodically. What are your thoughts associated with this exercise of Government of India? Do let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. If you like this initiative, do not forget to hit the like button. And if you're yet to join our YouTube channel, kindly do it right now. Thank you. Have a great day.